Hello to you, dear person listening to this. Make yourself comfortable and grab your best hot chocolate and let me tell you my story. Know that under my air of narrator, I'm about to tell you a moment of my life which cannot be erased from my memory. I also put a lot of forms in my story to try to forget the fact that I'm about to open up to thousands of strangers on the internet. A very complicated exercise for me. First of all, my presence here comes from the fact that for months, I've watched others, and each time the idea came to me to post here without my really having the courage, probably for fear of being judged, because of the fear that the person concerned will recognize me, because of the fear that my story is not creepy enough. Well, what does it matter? I need to take off a huge weight. A small disclaimer. The story that will follow happened 3 years ago now. It is possible that my version is slightly altered. Even if I try to be as faithful as possible, I blame my memory. Also, I'm a French person, so excuse any language errors. Now that the basics are in place, let's get into it. I am currently 19 years old. This story took place when I was 15 in the 11th grade. You should know that in life, I'm a very introverted person. I don't have much self-confidence. I'm afraid of crowds and strangers, and I avoid physical contact. Even with my friends, we don't hug or anything. At the time, my parents forbade me to use social networks to preserve myself. So at the start of high school, I created a Discord account. In the 11th grade, I joined a server full of nice people. And little by little, I became friends with one of the administrators, and we quickly became quite close. He told me about the hardships he had to manage the server. I supported him no matter what, flattered that someone was interested in a person like me. The months go by and we got closer and closer. I've never been happier to have someone paying attention to me. One day, I learned that a school trip was organized for our class. And guess where we were going? In my friend's town. I told myself that this was a golden opportunity that I could take advantage of and to meet him, and like other of my friends did with their online friends. So I wanted to do the same. I wanted to be like the grown-ups. I then announced to my friend Baptiste that I would be coming to his town on a school trip, and he was very happy to finally meet me. The weeks go by and the hour of the trip struck. I told Baptiste that I had a visit from his city, but after that, I would have 15 minutes of free time and we could see each other at that moment. He told me that it suited him, and he sent me a picture of his hat so that I could recognize him. He also told me that the photo was a bit dated. We shared phone numbers because I didn't have internet on mine. And it would be silly if we had no other ways of contacting each other to find out where the other one was. Level 1. A few hours until the meeting. The day starts well enough. My class and I take the bus early to be able to reach the city that we're going to visit. The day before, I informed my group of friends that I was going to meet someone from Discord in real life, and that I was so happy to do it. After sharing their concerns with me, they finally told me to enjoy. Baptiste asked me on the way for a photo of myself so that he could recognize me. Not being the fan of an idea of sending a photo to a stranger, even I don't have any photos of myself because it's something that bothers me a lot. I politely declined his request, explaining that we are in March and it's warm outside, and I'm probably the only person in town with a scarf and a coat on. Our bus finally arrives and it parks. We go to the meeting point to meet our guide, accompanied by our teachers. We quickly cross a fun fair, and it seems to me that I shared this detail with our beloved Baptiste. In short, we find our guide, and during the explanation of the course of the visit, I receive a message. And I believe that it is from this moment that I understood that things had taken another turn. I open the message, and what I see freezes my blood. I just see a photo of myself from my back with a message saying roughly, "I found you." I can't remember all the messages verbatim because I changed my phone, but I assure you that all my intentions that I put in are true. In a reflex of understanding, I turn around and notice that there's no one behind me. Nobody. I start to have shivers of fear, a rise of anxiety, and I answer, yeah, that's me, but we'll see each other after the visit. At that time, the only thing I could think of is, what have I gotten myself into? We go to the first place of our visit. A few seconds after we stop, I get another message. Another photo of me of my back. Creepy, isn't it? I look behind me and there's nobody. My anxiety skyrockets. I start to shake and just have my body screaming at me that I'm in danger and begging me to get out of here. We reach the second place. On the way between the first and second place, I saw him on a bench eating an ice cream cone. Our group passed by him. I then take out my phone and send it a message to try and defuse the problem. I saw you. Now you can wait until I finish the visit, please. How surprised I was to receive a third message. I think you know the rest. When it opened up, it was still the picture of me of my back. At that moment, my friends clearly noticed that something was wrong, but I didn't tell them anything. I didn't want to waste the moment that we'll have after. Baptiste and me. Level 2. Can the day get any creepier? We then reached the fourth place of our visit, and to my surprise, I didn't receive a text message. It was a real relief. He finally understood that his attitude was creepy. We come to the fifth place and still no text in sight, which comforts me in the idea that it was just a bad start, that he just didn't know how to go about approaching me. And then I turn my head, and I see with dismay that Baptiste was embedded in our group, and that he was now only a few meters from me. Yeah, you did not read that wrong. The guy came and joined a group of high school students. Oh, and a little detail that I intentionally left out. In the photo of him I received, he looked like he was 24 years old. So now think back to taking a picture of a minor. I repeat, I was 15 at the time, and stalking her for about 2 hours. Now think back to the fact that he joined a group of high school kids. Are you starting to identify the problem? Know that we will continue to descend into the depths of creepiness. Hang on to your seatbelts, we're back. At the end of the visit to the fifth place, the guide must leave urgently but warn us that another guide will come to take over, and that we'll have to wait for her in the cathedral square. While waiting, Baptiste will be sitting on a bench a few meters from me, still enjoying his best ice cream while our teachers leave us unattended to go buy theirs. Our second guide finally arrived and we continued the tour. During the rest of the visit, the guy will follow us everywhere, getting closer and closer to me. My friends at the time understood the problem and tried to not let me die of anguish. At the penultimate point, I see that my history teacher is really super close to him, and I sent him yet another message to dissuade him from continuing in. My teacher is right next to you, you better get going. The last point of the visit, finally. It was a huge relaxation for me because finally I was alone. And by alone I mean that our dear Baptiste was no longer with us. Finally it was quiet, and I could enjoy myself. I no longer felt in danger. Or am I? At this point, our visit was finishing up and the teachers gave us some time on our own. However, they did force us to be in groups of 4 and not to talk to any strangers. The usual peach, but my friends and I knew they knew. And I also received a message from Baptiste, telling me that he had been caught by my teachers who had threatened to settle it at the police station, and that suddenly he was at home waiting for me to finish. I then changed my tactics, the ostrich policy. I don't answer him. With my friends, we therefore decided to revisit certain points that we found just magnificent, without having the impression of dying of anguish because of our instinct telling us to steer clear. One of my friends suggested going to a bookshop to look at something, so we went there. The bookshop formed the corner of 2 streets and we barely stayed there for 1 minute, and then we left. I cannot describe to you in words what I felt when I saw Baptiste at the corner of the street in front of me. I had this feeling of being paralyzed, having difficulty breathing and not being in control. I was officially no longer able to control my body, caught in a state of panic. I looked at Baptiste, who was a little older than in the photo, since he must have been 27, but I didn't ask him. It wasn't really my priority at this time. My friends were just as shocked as I was, and Baptiste started talking to me, saying hello, coming over to hug me and to give me a kiss on the cheek. As I had mentioned earlier, any sort of physical contact put me in a state of anxiety, and he knew it. I had already told him before. And then he did the same thing to all my girlfriends and shook the hand of the only boy that was there. At that moment, as if it were just the two of us, he approached me and took me under his arm as if we were in love, and that we had known each other for a very long time. He holds on to me and takes me to some place that I don't know where. And that's when my buddy Jonathan approached me and comes to take me by the waist. A smart move for my friend, who makes him understand explicitly that I was already in a relationship and that he'd better not try to bang this girl. Once again, we're not, but he was trying to just help me. I could never thank Jonathan enough, who had the idea of impersonating my boyfriend so that the guy would stop approaching. It's very good for him, but he too is aware of my discomfort, and as soon as he sees that Baptiste had ceased his contact and he removed his hand from my waist. Baptiste then suggested that we go to a bar, telling us that he would pay, that we would just have to enjoy, and then he begins to enumerate the list of drinks with alcohol. One of my friends makes him understand that we are once again 15 years old, and that we wouldn't be touching a single drop of alcohol. Not really knowing how to get out of this mess, we followed him to the bar with a pretext that if the teachers found us in a bar, we were going to be screwed. He therefore suggested that we went up on the terrace, which we accepted for lack of an alternative. And there began an extremely embarrassing situation, which lasted about 5 minutes. The four of us, my friends and I, are at one table while Baptiste is at another table alone, with his back to me, and we talk like that, back to back. He keeps asking me questions, and I answer them in just an automatic response mode. I also watch my friends a lot to know what to do, and finally Jonathan pretends that we have to return to the meeting point given by the teachers. So we're getting ready to leave. Baptiste stays seated and tells me that it was a great time, and that if he ever came down to my city, we should spend time together. I quickly respond, and we get out of there quickly. After we get away, I start to cry a lot, shocked at what had happened to me. We go back to our town the next day and then start enjoying 2 weeks of vacation. When classes resume, during our English class, the teacher arrives and simply tells us at this sentence, "I owe you the truth." At that moment, my friends and I look at each other in a we know mode, and the teacher explains that during the visit, we were followed by a guy, and that during the change of guide, they went a little further to see if Baptiste was going to approach a specific person to find out who his target was. After a long moment, the teacher told us that they could not find the person in question, and that the history teacher had threatened him to leave us alone. Following this story, I blocked him everywhere. Right now, I don't know what his intentions were, if it was just some guy who didn't know how to approach me, or if his intentions were much more worse. I also don't know what would have happened if Jonathan had not taken me from his grip, and if I had been alone with him, if I hadn't been able to flee away. Remember that I was in a state of astonishment, and that I no longer had control of my body. I have suffered heavy after effects from this trauma. The more time passed, the more I became paranoid when I was in the street. Was he around the corner waiting for me? And then this paranoia became more and more omnipresent, to the point that today I can no longer leave my house alone without having panic attacks. At this point, I'm really thinking of going to a shrink to settle this problem, because I have to live as a recluse, barricaded in my room 24/7. The only time I leave my room in the month is to go to the parking lot, to take my car and go see my parents. Thank you for listening to the story that absolutely traumatized me. But know that me talking about it is also my therapy. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as it relieved me to write it. I didn't think that I would have a story to share on here so recently. For a little context, we have had a really bad issue with our neighbors. Not bad towards us, but they're dealers. They could do worse stuff, but I don't know. I only know about the drugs because the house owner's little sister who was in high school with me told me. She was removed from their custody and they actually got the SWAT team called on them last year. I have met the owner's girlfriend or wife. I'm not really sure what she is to him, but I know she had 2 young kids, probably 7 when I met them. I don't know what happened to them. Now that the context is set up, let's begin with the story. I was at home during the winter holiday break from college. My mom and I found out really late that the Netflix show Lucifer just aired its final season. We love the show and we watch it together. My dad was at work as he usually works from 5 p.m. to 4 a.m. My mom and I decided to binge the second half of the season this night. We were meant to watch like 2 episodes, but we all know that you never really stop at 2. Anyways, so we're up at 2 in the morning watching one of the last episodes. Throughout the night until this point, starting at, I believe, 8 p.m., we heard our neighbors yelling outside. I told my mom to ignore it because it's none of our business. It continued on and off for the rest of the night until around 1:30, when we hear them arguing on our porch. My mom and I just kind of look at each other because why would they bring their argument onto our porch? Like there's a fence between us. So that means that they had to purposely go around the fence to get to our porch. So they argue for another 30 minutes and then everything goes quiet. We figured they had left, only for someone to start kicking at our door and trying the handle. It was locked gladly, but my mom and I were on our feet. My mom tossed me her phone and told me to call 911, while she made sure that our side door was locked. We only have a front and a side door, and an extra crappy thing, only my mom's room has a lock on the door. So I call, telling the operator that somebody's trying to get in. My mom starts talking to the operator, explaining what's going on. Now I have a bad habit of not having my phone on me around my parents, and I'm a total bookworm. Have been since I was a kid. And phones usually distract me from reading or drawing as I'm an art student too. So I usually have it up in my room charging. So I ask my mom if I need to call my dad. She nods, and now I need to go upstairs to get to my phone. I'm scared to turn on the lights, so I crawl upstairs in the dark to get my phone. I call my dad and try to look outside from my windows. I couldn't see anything, but I explained the situation to my dad. He's rightfully freaked out and says that he'll come home. My dad works 20 minutes away, so I was still scared. A lot can happen in 20 minutes. So I stupidly hang up in the panic and go downstairs to my mom's room. The person is now at the front door kicking more aggressively as my mom and I hide in her room. I call my dad again, telling him that I don't want to die and begging him to be on the phone with me. He agrees as we hear the banging come to a stop. The operator says that police will be over in a few minutes, and my mom looks out the window. I yelled at her, explaining that if the person was trying to get in saw that, they would know that we were in here. As I'm explaining this, we get confirmation that the police are there. I tell my dad, and the operator confirms that they found someone at our door and it was safe to come outside. And so my mom does. I peek my head outside and see the neighbor's girlfriend or wife talking to the police. She explained that she needed help and that's why she tried to break in. I'm not sure if I believe that. Why would she try both doorknobs? Regardless, the police ended up taking her down to the station, and my dad stayed home for the rest of that weekend. So if you really needed help, lady, I hope the police managed to help you out.